Hey everyone, welcome to CKAN Insider. I'm Kate from Link Digital, and today I'm sitting down with Scott, the Chief Revenue Officer at Link Digital, who spends his days talking to organizations about their data portal needs. We thought it would be valuable to share some of the patterns we see in those conversations because chances are, if you're watching this, you're asking similar questions. So Scott, welcome to the first episode of the CKAN Insider. How are you today?
I am great. Thank you, Kate, and it's great to be here and looking forward to having the conversation about CKAN and what our customers say and how things, sort of the market is moving. So really looking forward to having a chat with you today.
Great to hear from you. So, both you and I love to, get into the details straight up.
Yep.
So I'm going to go ahead with my first question. So can you give us a sense of the types of organizations you talk to and where they are in their journey when they first reach out?
Yeah, look, we don't have a typical client in many respects. We've got a broad spectrum of clients who work with us and use CKAN and work with us to implement and sort of help maintain and build their CKAN installation. So we see everything from national level government bodies to niche research, sort of non-government organisations or not-for-profits. So we see a wide range of organisations using us. And the reality is that for most of them, they're not starting from nothing. They're usually at what I sort of term as a data crossroads. They've outgrown a basic file sharing system or a legacy portal that's become basically a graveyard for all their data and all their information. And they realize they need a full professional ecosystem, not just a website. And so it's usually at a breaking point, and either a legal mandate from the government's come along where they need to be transparent or they can't meet, or there's a technical failure where their current system can't handle the complexity of their metadata or the volume of their users. So that's when we really see them come to us, and the types of organisations are varied, but they're always at that breaking point, and they always need something, and they need it to sort of manage things as they move forward.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. But so let's talk about their evaluation phase that data managers or project coordinators are doing when learning about CKAN. So my question is, what are the top concerns organizations raise when they first start evaluating open source software such as CKAN? How do you typically address, and also how do you typically address those concerns they have?
Yeah, look, I think one of the top questions that we get is sort of around sustainability control. They're tired of being locked in with a vendor, with a big global corporate vendor, and they want to know if they build on CKAN, do they own it? Can they move it? And who supports it if the original dev team all of a sudden leaves? And that's the reality. And so the answer is that we lean into the open source nature of CKAN. It's about data sovereignty. About they own the code, they own the data, and they own the destiny of the platform. They have all that ownership themselves.
Okay. Well, are there any concerns that come up almost every time, regardless of the organization size or sector, or regardless?
Yeah, I think it is really around that ownership and who supports it. And so they're the key ones that really come through. And that's where they want to know who's going to sustain it and who controls it, and do they control it and do they own it. And that for them is the big issue. And that's why, as I said before, is that our response to that is you own the code, you own the data, and the destiny of the platform is in your hands as an organization. And that provides a great level of comfort and knowledge to them. And that's where we step in to help them in that process. We don't just sort of go, off you go, here's everything. We're part of that process and help them along the way as well with our experience and deep knowledge of CKAN as well.
Yeah, open source is big in full control over their data, which is good. So how about what should an organization have figured out before they even start the CKAN evaluation process? So what preparation makes the biggest difference for them?
Yeah, I think it's the first thing for us is they've got to understand what their metadata is and what their metadata schema is. And if you don't know how you want to describe your data, CKAN becomes an empty library. It's really just quite empty. So they need to know what is on their shelves before they start building the shelves. They really need to know what's going on there. And the consequences of that is that if they skip this, they end up with a messy portal that no one can search effectively, and you're just moving the mess from one room of the house to another effectively, without being able to know what's on those shelves.
Yeah. Okay. So earlier you talked about full control, right? So some people think CKAN can't be customized in its security infrastructure or is limited in visual platforms to integrate with, but actually it's even more than that, right? So my next question is, what are the biggest misconceptions you hear about CKAN from organizations that are just starting to explore it?
I think one of the biggest misconceptions is I sort of view it as the product trap. They think CKAN is a plug and play app like Microsoft Word. They think they can just put it in, and that solves all their problems. The truth is that CKAN is a framework. And another way to sort of really bring it back to real life, and I'm a pretty simple guy, and I like having practical examples of how things actually work and manage, is that it's like a commercial kitchen. CKAN gives you the industrial stove, the plumbing, and all the prep tables to make all the fantastic meals in a commercial kitchen. But you still have to decide on the menu, and you have to hire the chefs. So it's intentionally minimalist, so it can be customized, not because it's missing features. It's really down, again, it comes back to that. The organization owns the data. They own how it's set up, and it's really their destiny of how they use it. So that's one of the biggest misconceptions we come across, and the best way we sort of push back is it's a framework for them to use and build from.
Great. And that's how customizable it is. And so is there anything about CKAN that organizations tend to overestimate or underestimate?
I think on the overestimate side, the need for custom code. Often the existing extensions that we're familiar with can actually handle 90% of their requirements. They don't need to do a whole lot of custom work on it. So that's the overestimation they make. Underestimation, sometimes it's on the user experience and the governance side. Look, a data portal is useless if a non-technical researcher can't find a data set in 3 clicks. The technology is rarely why products fail. It's the lack of that internal workflow for who approves and who updates the data. So again, it's what goes on the shelf and what shelf they're going onto, so people can find that information easily.
Great. And so how about those most challenging CKAN use cases that organizations should be aware of? Because there are a lot of organizations who are transitioning to open source from proprietary, but what are those kinds of things that they need to be aware of before doing that?
Yeah, look, I think one of them is what we refer to as the federated harvesting. So that's when you're pulling data from 50 different sources. So in some of the examples we've got is the case studies we've worked on, is there's a range of different local councils or different government authorities needing to pull all the information in. So this example, 50 different sources where everyone has a different naming convention and naming standards. So it's literally like trying to change a tire in a car while it's going at 100 k's an hour. You can't do it because everyone's doing their own thing and it's all moving and it's moving so fast. So that's one of the most challenging case studies. The other one is when CKAN isn't the fit. And we've had to tell prospects at times of like, if you just need to host 5 PDF reports a year, you don't need CKAN. Use your CMS. CKAN is for living data. If you need a private collaborative sandbox for messy drafts, you need a document management system, not a data portal. So it's really looking at those going, so the most challenging things are where there's a lot of different data sets and all different naming conventions and different things coming and going all the time. And also when CKAN isn't the best fit. And we live sort of, one of our values as a company is honesty. We'll be honest with someone saying, look, you actually don't need this at this present time. And that's probably the most challenging use cases we've seen in my time.
Yeah, I like how transparent you are in there, because you've already also answered some of the questions that I have in the next one. So how about, let's say, now, could we talk about migration and transition challenges of CKAN? So the question that I have here is that migration is a big concern for many organizations, right? What are the most common challenges you see during this transition to CKAN? So I know we've had several clients who have already transitioned from proprietary to open source.
Yeah.
What are their biggest concern?
I think some of the biggest challenges you see during that transition is what I'd refer to as the metadata mirror. So migrating data acts as a giant spotlight sometimes on years of bad data entry, really highlights. And you're not just moving those files, you're sometimes moving, you're mapping messy legacy metadata into a clean new standard. So that becomes a real challenge. So you've got all this information there that people have just been putting in, and staff have come and go, and people have come and go, and it's just you wanting to get it presented and put into a portal in a clean way. That becomes one of the main challenges. The other one is it's all where the past data sins come to light. It's always where all those things that you've skipped over, it's like, oh, we'll come back to that. Oh, we'll just come back to that. And it always takes longer than the technical transfer, because once they're in, you've got to go back and go, oh, why did we do that? Or who did this? Or who did what? So there's some of the common challenges we see through sort of transitioning from an existing system into a CKAN data portal.
Well, it's a huge work, because if you're just a one-man person team in doing this job, definitely that's going to be a challenge. But for other organizations, so the question that I have here next is that if an organization is currently on a different platform and considering CKAN, what advice would you give them for planning the transition?
Look, for planning for a transition, as I said, I like sort of everyday analogies. It's don't move the junk. Treat it like you're moving house. You don't pack the broken toaster. If there's something that's not working, if there's something that's not going to add any value into your portal and make it more complex, don't migrate it across. Just leave it where it is. And then there's also the sort of the 80-20 rule, where you identify the 20% of your data that is going to get 80% of the traffic, and you move that first, get that perfect, and then you decide if the rest even needs to be migrated or just archived. So really look at what's going to drive the most engagement in your portal and focus on that first.
Yeah, great. So I'm down to my last 2 to 3 questions, Scott. It's been really good responses that we get here. So my next one is that what makes a CKAN project succeed or fail? So from your experience, what separates a CKAN project that goes well from one that struggles?
Yeah.
Are there warning signs early in a project that predict trouble down the line? Or
there's a couple of things here, and the first one is you got to have a look at project versus product. Now, projects, in my experience, that struggle are the ones that treat the launch of the portal as the finish line. But the projects that actually succeed treat that launch of the portal as day one. They know it's an ongoing thing. They know that, hey, listen, we can add more. And that's the beauty of using something like CKAN, is you can keep evolving it. You can keep making it better. It's not a set and forget. And that's where I sort of see that project versus product. So it's not the finished product on day one is not the end result. That's the start, and you can start iterating and developing further and further from there. That's the first one. And then there's a bit of a warning sign that we sometimes see with organizations. If a project around data, a data portal like CKAN, is owned solely by the tech people or the IT department, it's going to be in trouble. It needs to be owned by the business and even the policy side of the organization, so they know what's moving across and how the data is collected, how the data is going to be shown, what data is going to be in there, how it's going to drive engagement with what is in that portal. And so you really need to make sure that, yes, there's technical elements of what's happening when you're building a portal in CKAN, but you also need to make sure that the business and the policy side right in lockstep with what's happening from a technical perspective.
You answered my question about readiness. That's great.
Yeah, and
You
you
answered from day
really,
one.
yeah, on readiness, you really need that internal champion. You can't just, it can't be a coder, it needs to be someone who truly understands that value of the data. You can build the best engine in the world, you can build everything, but you need someone on the side of the person who's using the data, who knows what's supposed to do, what it's going to be used for, and how people are going to be using it. So you really need that sort of that steward of that. Hey, listen, we're the internal champion. This is how it needs to work from an actual user's perspective.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm done to my last question because you answered so many of my questions already that you have included in that last part. So if someone is watching this at the very beginning of their CKAN journey, what's the one piece of advice you'd give them?
The one piece of advice I would say is don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Start with a solid core CKAN implementation, get your best data in there, and let user feedback guide your growth. It's really an evolution. It's not a big bang. And that would be my advice to people out there looking at CKAN today.
Love it. Thank you, Scott. So for everyone watching, if any of this resonated with where you are right now, we are happy to have a no pressure conversation about your data portal needs. So you can reach us at linkdigital.com.au. And if you want to keep learning, we'll link our other CKAN resources in the description below. Thank you, Scott, for joining me.
Thanks, Kate. Been great to chat with you today.
Thank you.